now we're moving on to the mistakes that you want to try to avoid, the pesky mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, the first one, and I think you can put this together from what I've already said, is if you're going to do a project, tell a story, don't rush it. Don't rush. Just take your time. Just choose something that's local, that's close, that you can access all the time, and just take your time. Even when you come home, it's okay not to edit those pictures right away. It's okay to download them, back them up, and just leave them alone for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even, I leave stuff sometimes for several years at a time before I really go back to it and make an edit. And it's incredible what you will miss the first time through your edit. So just don't rush. I think that's a really good, photography. It's gotten a lot faster in the last 20 years with the advent of digital, which is both a good thing and a challenging thing. So just take your time.
Dan, that's such a good point. We've talked about it too. Ed Koshy said you've got to spend enough time to let the magic unfold. And it isn't a hit and run type thing. And that's part of the problem with this Insta, mentality is it should be like that, but it doesn't always work that way, right? You have to let it unfold. And you have to let the scene do what it's going to do, which may not happen in 1 minute. It might happen in an hour. It might happen in a day.
Point number 2, you should share every single thing you're doing in real time. Just kidding.
Wait a minute. Get that guy out of here.
Yeah, that if I had actually said that for real, then you would have known that it's not me.
That was it.
Camera and telling you to share your work in real time. You don't want to share your work in real time. You don't, especially if you are doing a project or a story, do not under any circumstances put this on Instagram, because all you're doing is undermining your entire project. You are undermining the relevance and the power and everything else, no matter who tells you to do this, because the vast majority of people in the photo industry will tell you to do that. They all have ulterior motives for telling you that. They have no interest in how good your project is or if your project is successful. They are making their own lives very, very easy, and they're playing in a system that they've all been sort of brainwashed into thinking is what they have to do. It's completely misguided, and you don't want to do it. So just take your time. If you have a confidant or you have a mentor or you have a group, for example, last night at my house, it was myself, my wife, a photographer who's also an instructor, the director of a workshop program, and a photographer filmmaker. And the photographer filmmaker came over to show us 4 a little sneak peek because he wanted our feedback. And he's known us all for 20 years. He trusts us. We all gave him completely different feedback, and that's what he needed and wanted. He didn't put it on Instagram and say, can I get feedback? Because that's the worst thing he could have possibly done. Not to mention, if you show too much of a story, then the audience says, I've already seen it. I'm not interested. I don't want to buy the book. I don't want to read this. I don't want to follow along. So you have to be very, very careful what you share, how you share it. So that's point number 2.
Let me bring something up here. We have a class called AYP Plus, and that's what we're doing. Amongst this group, it is a safe group to show the project as it's developing, but that's a very different kind of thing than you're talking about. It's not going out to the broad world. This is a trusted inside group. By the way, Jared, put the link up there because you guys who want to be part of that should be in that group. This whole summer, we're doing projects.
70% of the traffic on social are bots. So you're not even getting humans. Twitter is particularly bad, where a huge percentage of that stuff, it's just bots. And so, I see these photographers putting stuff on Twitter, and I'm like, you're just going backwards in terms of relevance. Because the other thing is, and this is, I'm going to give you another little hard truth here. Nobody cares what you're doing all day, every day. Like if Marc had tuna for lunch, I don't care. I love Marc. I love Marc. I don't need to know what he ate for lunch, right? I don't care. So people will tell you, oh, it's great. I love that. It's not. But behind your back, they'd say, why is he posting all that stuff?
Yeah.
So you speak when you have something to say, and otherwise just go work. Just go work and make the best pictures you possibly can. And then when you have something to say, when the whole thing is done, the perfect example for me when I was coming up as a photographer was Sebastião Salgado.
Yeah.
We didn't have social media. We didn't have phones. We didn't have the internet. And Salgado would pop up every few years. And he would pop up with something that everyone else just went, holy cow, you got to be kidding. Like, this is the project's done on a scale that nobody else was doing. That's the kind of thing that I think is still relevant today, much more so than post. It's just like, I literally don't follow, of all my like hero photographers, I don't follow anybody online.
Yeah.
I don't follow. Okay. Point number 3. I mentioned this before. A lot of people get obsessed over the technical approach to a project, and they cannot get beyond it. And the only people who care about a technical approach are other technical photographers, not even aesthetic photographers who are enamored by aesthetics. And here's another little, maybe a little window into the realities of the photo world that it may surprise you. A lot of the legendary photographers that I've met, not a lot, I would say more than you would imagine, of the most successful sort of legendary photographers I've ever met had almost no technical ability whatsoever. In fact, some of them did not even know how to set their cameras and lights up. It was all done for them. But what they had was the vision to make the pictures that they knew they wanted. That was the key. And so, I don't know a really successful, good, high-end photographer who's obsessed over equipment. We don't have those conversations and talks. When they show up, we talk about process. We talk about museums and galleries and curators and collections and other work that we've seen that's really impressive. Nobody talks about kit. It just immediately sort of identifies you as a consumer photographer level. And so if that's fine, if kit's what's driving you, then by all means go for it, because there's a huge audience for that. But if you want to make pictures, it's really not part of the conversation once you explain why you chose what you did.
Dan, it's true in almost any field, like in surfing or climbing, for instance. What do good surfers talk about? They don't talk about their board. They talk about the conditions, where they surfed, why that wave, that break was amazing or whatever. The board is like, okay, same thing with climbing, as you know. Like, you're not talking about, wow, I got these incredible boots and I'm using these great cams, or, that might be a tiny, tiny portion of the conversation. But just as with photography, the conversation is about the story that you're on, what you found out, what you discovered, your vision, as you said, that it really is what people talk about.
You look at Alex Honnold, who's the famous free climber now, that the film won the Academy Award a couple of years ago, Jimmy Chin film.
Free Solo.
Honnold, Free Solo. Honnold, I saw someone, I can't remember who it was, ask him a question about his shoes. And, he said, look, I use the same kind of shoes all the time. I just have a ton of these pairs, and I have to break them in to get them to a certain level. And then once they're at that level, that's the only thing I use. And if you're talking about an athlete or a creative, and I think in his case, you can apply both of those titles, I think you would not find someone who has a more critical need with a piece of equipment than him, because that's it between him and death, basically, or is the rubber on those Las Sportivas or whatever brand he's using. But I found his answer really refreshing, which was, yes, obviously this is a very critical part of the process here, but I use the same thing over and over and over again because I can't change up. If I change up, I risk dying. And so I think with photography, it's the same thing. I just heard that Abbas, the Magnum photographer, died recently. There's a new documentary film out about him. And I met him on the streets of Paris probably 30 years ago. And we had this really nice conversation about his project, which was called Allah Akbar, which was his long time, like 30-year study of the Islam religion. And, he shot the same thing forever. He was shot black, Leica rangefinders with black and white film. And when I talked to him on the street in Paris, we didn't talk about equipment. And I had done a project in the US on Islam, and he had spent like 30 years covering Islam all over the world. And so that's what we spoke about. We didn't talk about, kit, that kind of stuff.
Please subscribe and enable the bell so you don't miss any of our new shows. Like the video and please share it and leave your comments. I love hearing from you. And remember to get out and capture your own images of life.